Hello, happy Wednesday. So today I wanted to talk to you about how to trust your gut. We have a little personal situation going on today that my husband mentioned about something for our house, and then is feeling a little unsteady about his decision. And we were talking about your gut and what does your gut say and trusting your gut. And I was just reflecting on that and how that's not always obvious what your gut says and what that means. So I thought I would just do a little live on that quick around how do you know. So it occurred to me that years ago when I was in my master's program for counseling, that I took a class, there were several classes that really stood out. And this one was with a teacher. Her name was Marianne, and she was really an amazing teacher, and the class was very helpful. And one day, one of our activities when we came into class was around your gut, and it was trying to educate us as future counselors how to just discern that piece of yourself and to become familiar with it. So anyway, I really appreciate that. And I think that is perhaps a skill that we don't usually maybe always learn. So anyway, what we did was she asked us to think about something that we knew and something that deep down inside of us that you just knew, that you didn't have a reason to know it, you didn't have proof about it, there was nothing that was factual about it, but just inside of you, you knew. So I want you to think about something like that right now. If you want to post that in the comments, that would be great. So something that you just know. And again, you have no proof, no reason to know it, but you just know it. For me, it was really interesting. At that point, it was at the beginning of my counseling training, and actually Mike and I had just started dating. And if you know me personally, our story is funny and interesting because of several reasons. With Mike, there were several things I was like, I felt nervous and not really wanting to have this crush on him and to like him, but I did. And so when she asked that question, and I kind of did this internal thing to go, who do I know? And I was like, I know that I'm going to marry Mike. And that was really a big deal because, like I said, there were a couple of things that I was like, I don't know that if I want to marry Mike. But in my gut, I knew, I was like, no, I'm going to marry Mike. And that has obviously happened 20 years later. Here we are. So anyway, what was your gut knowing? So now, how do you know your gut? Sorry to be long. But okay, so getting into the first point is to know your gut. So what you do in order to know your gut is to practice things like that. Yes, that one happened to be true, but you can keep practicing. And that was her point in the class, is to keep observing things that you know. So for example, you're walking down the street, you don't necessarily hear anything, but you're like, I know there's someone behind me, and you turn around and there is someone. That affirms your gut. Or let's say that, you're doing something and you just feel like a knowing and you check it out. So you just become more aware of things that you feel like you know in your gut, and then check them out if they're true or not. So again, it's really being aware of yourself, and it's being not just kind of going through life unattached and unaware, but becoming more aware of yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and what you know and what you don't know. So when you know your gut, you're testing it. It is an internal voice of knowing. As a Christian, I feel like sometimes that can be the Holy Spirit gives you this confidence or knowing. In a non-faith-based way, sometimes people will refer to their future self or their unclouded, clear gut self has this knowing. But regardless where it comes from, everybody has it. You may not be in touch with your gut knowing, which takes practice. That's why meditation is really a big deal, and just getting really calm and centered is really important, because when we're just flying through life, it's really hard to hear that quiet voice because it's a very quiet and still voice. So practice hearing it, practice paying attention to that. So number one, that's knowing your gut and knowing your gut voice. Then number two is separating from the fog. A lot of times what happens when we really need that voice, it's because it's an important decision. It's a big decision. It's something that there's pressures around. So the fog is kind of the noise. And in today's world with our phones and technology and the speed of things, there's a lot of noise. I'm not going to say that, woe is us in this society, that it's so much worse. I think every era has their challenges, so let's not be a victim about it. But the reality is that there is a lot of noise today. That's just the truth. And the noise is messages and things competing for our attention, and also different things that pull us, maybe traditional values versus what we want or whatever. There's just a lot of things that pull for our attention and pull our thoughts and emotions. So separate that from the fog or the noise. So I'm going to call it the fog or the noise. So the fog is what makes it kind of cloudy and unclear. The noise is really what creates the fog. So a lot of times the way that you recognize that is it has a sense of confusion. It has a sense of question. Usually there's fear or anxieties in it, or a pressure like, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out. And there's this urgency or whatever, and it just creates a lot of noise. So when you have noise, you are not accessing your gut. So it's very important to quiet that noise. And that actually was my fourth point. So I'm just going to talk about that in a minute, but to quiet the noise is really important in order to get to your gut. My third point, though, was to recognize, so one, know your gut, know the noise, and then to ask questions. So as you're trying to make a decision or as you're trying to understand something, it is okay to ask questions. I do a lot of work with the DISC, the personality profiles. S is the more introverted, loyal, family-oriented profile. They generally don't like asking questions. In one statistic, it showed 63% of the average population of people who take the DISC profile have the S profile, which means that more than half of the people who you encounter have the S profile. What that means is that over half of us are in that S profile, and S's typically don't like to ask questions. They like to figure it out on their own. They feel kind of stupid or vulnerable asking questions, so they just don't like to ask questions. If there's something they're feeling uncertain or unsure about, they will try to figure it out without asking questions. When I encourage you to ask questions, because asking questions helps you to further discern your gut versus the fog. And so if you feel confused, then figure out, what do I feel confused about, and ask a question about that. If you feel fearful, what am I feeling fearful about, and ask a question about that. So asking questions is very important to help you discern, is that my knowing gut voice, or is that the fog that's being created? So asking questions is a good thing. There's not a stupid question. It's important to ask questions. And you're not just asking questions all crazy. You're asking intentional questions to help you to discern your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So that's point number 3. And then number 4, once you have asked those questions, now go sit with it. And just to be clear, 24 hours should be plenty of time. Some decisions are really big when we're making big decisions, spending a lot of money on something. But even you spend a lot of money when you buy a house, and even that decision, typically you know what you need to know within 24 hours. So it's an interesting thing. Sometimes it takes us a week or longer to come around to some of our decisions, but you usually know within 24 hours. And so what you want to do after you've asked your questions is to go and sit. And what you're doing when you're sitting is a couple things. Is number 1, you're just really getting clarity. So you might do journaling to vet out your thoughts. You might go do some yoga to just really get still and to allow the fog to clear and the clutter and all the noise to go away, and so that you can get still so you can hear your voice of knowing. Sometimes you talk to people. Personally, I'm an external processor. I'm really blessed to have a couple amazing people in my life who I am able to call when I feel foggy and cluttered, and they are really a gift to me because I'm able to talk and just go, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and kind of process through what is fog versus what is my inner knowing. And that's incredibly valuable. So if you're an external processor, get clarity through processing with someone in your inner circle. If you're an internal processor, journal and just kind of reflect on it. But what you want to do is sit with it and then really get down to, what do I know? What do I know is true? What do I know I feel drawn to? Why do I feel drawn to this? What is this really about? So you get a lot of clarity in that knowing after you sit with it. And then the last thing, 5, is to trust your gut. And I put a little caveat on there, trust your gut and watch for the boomerang. And what I mean by that is when you know and you've made that decision in clarity, trust that gut and sit with it. Even though you may feel nervous, you may feel anxious or whatever, if you knew it in your gut, it is a solid decision. And the boomerang, I'm sorry, I want to back up. I just want to mention, because another thing that, again, I've mentioned before that I'm a Christian, so under the 4, getting clarity, some people will pray about it, seek counsel, things like that are also all in that number 4 bundle that can be important. Moving back to 5, sorry, with trusting your gut and the boomerang. So the boomerang is when it keeps coming back. So maybe you thought you were trusting your gut and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to go with it. So in our situation, okay, we're just going to hire this person. And so we hire the person, then boomerang, it's back. And we're questioning again. So that is a sign that maybe you're not trusting your gut. You're using your knowledge, you're using your reason, you're using emotion, like, oh, I feel really bad to say no, and I shouldn't say no, or I feel really bad because he's already invested a lot of time, or whatever it is, right? Sometimes we get hooked into things and we think that it's our gut when it's not. It's that we feel guilty about something, we feel bad about something, we feel fearful about something, and so we've made a decision that we thought was our gut, but it really wasn't. And those decisions will boomerang. They will keep coming back and landing right in front of you to go, really? Is this your decision? Really? Is this your decision? And so boomerang are just an indication that perhaps you hadn't listened to your gut, and to back up and go, okay, wait a minute, was that my gut? Or am I responding out of fear? Was that my gut? Or am I afraid to make this tough decision? Am I avoiding conflict? Am I avoiding something tough? So anyway, all right, I see that's a lot of time. So that is all. But I really believe that trusting your gut is a very important skill to learn. The higher up in leadership you are, the more you need to have this tool accessible to you, because you need to make quick decisions. You need to make fast decisions sometimes. And while we don't always want to make fast and quick decisions, sometimes it's just important, and you have to trust your gut. Talk to a military person who's been in training. What are they training for? That's part of what they're training for. They too need to understand what their gut is and train. If there's a military person who listens to this, I'd love your feedback on how they do that in training, because you work in high stakes situations, and so your gut is even more important. So 5 things. Number 1, know your gut, know the voice of your gut. Number 2, recognize the fog and what is creating all the noise and how to clear that out. Number 3 is be able to ask questions to get more information so that you can make a good decision. Number 4 is have the ability to sit and get still so that you can reflect the way that you need to and get the right answer. And then number 5 is trust your gut and know if it keeps coming back that it's not just trust your gut and be stupid, but trust your gut. And if it keeps boomeranging back, something is off. So go ahead and take a second look. All right, good luck in your gut reflections and decision making and in your leadership today.